Welcome to episode 119 of the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Brightman, coming to you pretty late on Tuesday, July 25th. It was my son's birthday today and it was off my normal schedule, but still getting out the daily podcast. Hopefully, you hear this tonight or tomorrow morning on your way to work or tomorrow, anytime. Doesn't matter to me. We'll have another one back tomorrow. But for this episode, I wanted to focus on Rutgers football. Wednesday, Big Ten Media Days began. Rutgers will be there. I wrote an article for today talking about things to watch for, both from a conference perspective and also Rutgers. But even more news broke today, something that I didn't cover because it didn't come out till today, that Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh could be suspended for the first four games of the 23 season based on a recruiting level one violation in 2020 during the dead period. They're calling it Burger Gate. It really wasn't it really doesn't matter. The bottom line is it made me think, okay, so Rutgers goes to the big house week four, Harbaugh's not there. Now, I'm not implying that Rutgers is going to win that game. Michigan is the heavy favorite to win the Big Ten, go back to the college football playoffs for 3 years, third year in a row. They're loaded. But it did make me think, what an interesting break that would be. It would just be an interesting storyline for Rutgers to go to the big house 2 years ago. They made it a really close game. And, they led Michigan at halftime last year. So for Harbaugh not to be there, obviously it's a factor, right? So in Rutgers' first four games, their first two Big Ten games potentially, you're talking about the head coach for both programs not being there. Pat Fitzgerald was fired by Northwestern. That's a whole nother can of worms in terms of that program being a complete crisis right now. More comes out by the day, lawsuits, assistant coach accusations. There was just who's their starting safety that just entered the transfer portal. Jeremiah Lewis just entered the transfer portal today. Who knows the shape that Northwestern will be when they show up in Piscataway on September 3rd. I said recently, that's a must win. That's a game Rutgers has to win. If they have any aspirations of having a good season, you have to win that game. The Cleveland.com unofficial media poll came out today. Rutgers was picked sixth in the Big Ten East. They were the only two schools that got more votes than were Indiana, picked to finish last in the East, and Northwestern. So Northwestern is your season opener. I mean, that's a game you got to win. They went 1-11 last year. Now they're in complete disarray. Who knows if they'll have a full coaching staff? Who knows if they'll have a full roster? You have to win that game. I know that tortured Rutgers fans, and I am one to a degree, look at that scenario as the perfect, face plant, blow up in your face opportunity that Rutgers could lose that game. And they could. But if this program is progressing the right way in year four of Greg Schiano, had Maya Hanatu on Monday's podcast, and I was really impressed with him. And I think we've heard some robotic answers from other, coaches and players over the years and about culture and everything. But I thought Maya Hanatu was just so genuine, and you could see the passion and also the realness in terms of the responsibility that he as a team captain has for the culture of the team and how committed they are to really making, listen, they want to make a statement. They want to have a winning season. They want to prove people wrong. And he made me believe that this team could be in the right mindset going into this year to take advantage of opportunities. And that's really my whole point of this episode that I wanted to discuss is that, you know, you're going to get some breaks along the way. You're going to get some bad breaks. You're going to get some good breaks. But how it really does speak to the culture and also the mindset of the team. Are you able to take advantage of those breaks when they present themselves? Northwestern now is an opportunity that Rutgers must take advantage. Going to the big house with Harbaugh not there, that's an opportunity. Can they take advantage of it? That's a whole nother level. But the point stands because on paper, right, you're considered better than Indiana and Northwestern. Northwestern, we just talked about. Indiana, they've beaten twice, two in a row. You go to Bloomington this year. That's a game that Rutgers needs to win. If you can win those two games, if you can beat Wagner, which God, I mean, that's the one of the worst FCS teams there are. Temple at home, Virginia Tech, toss-up game. And I think that's the bigger point is very rare that teams win every winnable game on their schedule. It's very rare that everything goes your way, right? In 2014, I've talked about that was a year that almost everything went Rutgers' way to go 8-5. Obviously, that Penn State game was a big example of it not going their way. But so many things that year went their way. And part of it was that, you do create your own luck. And you are built to be able to take advantage of opportunities. And is this current Rutgers team able to do that? So those are all 5 winnable games. And then listen, Michigan State comes to Piscataway on October 14th for homecoming. What type of state is Michigan State going to be in when they come in with Mel Tucker? I mean, this is a huge season for that program for Mel Tucker. 2 years ago, tremendous year. Last year, really struggled. Rutgers has been very competitive, with Michigan State since Schiano returned with Mel Tucker there. They shocked them in East Lansing, right? Schiano's first game back. They did lose 2 years ago, pretty handily. Last year, they almost won in East Lansing again. So this could be an opportunity. Michigan State plays Washington, Maryland, and Iowa back to back to back, and then a bye game, and then goes to Piscataway. But who knows? I mean, if they lose all 3 of those games, I mean, they could be in a state of turmoil by the time they come to Rutgers. Can Rutgers take advantage of that? That, to me, Michigan State on paper, that's a game that Rutgers should be competitive in and has a chance to win. So what's the mindset of both of those teams entering that game? Iowa, early November, second week of November, they go to Iowa City. I mean, that offense, right, was abysmal last year, even worse than Rutgers. Brian Ferentz is under fire. I mean, there's, under longtime coach Kirk Ferentz's father. Is it going to be an improved offense? Is by the time, the 10th game of the season when Rutgers goes to play them, I mean, is it, is the media and fan base like outside with pitchforks because they're scoring 10 points a game? Is the Rutgers offense improved then? Can they go into Iowa City and be competitive and not make mistakes and give them a run for their money? I mean, it's possible. It's possible based on you can't predict where teams are from a mindset mentality perspective in November. It could be rough. It could all the Ferentzes could be on the hot seat at that point. I mean, Kirk Ferentz probably will never be on the hot seat, but it's certainly going to be an uncomfortable situation if the offense stinks again, and everyone's calling for him to fire his son. And Rutgers walks in there in November. Who knows? Who knows? Maryland, last game of the season, 2 years ago, they were, I mean, so far injured. I mean, the third string quarterback, they were riddled. And Rutgers took advantage and won. Last year, Maryland kicked Rutgers' butt. But what's it going to be this year? Can Rutgers be healthy going into the last game? Is Maryland potentially, really banged up? Are they not having as good of a year as maybe they had hoped? Um, remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. But all those, games, I mean, things could break Rutgers' way where that team is able to take advantage enough of those breaks to get 6 or more wins. It's possible. And that's what I think going into this season is really worth thinking about, and it all starts week 1. You have to beat Northwestern, and I obviously want to see them win handily, but you want to see them win. And there is going to be a challenge to that game. There's going to be a little bit more unpredictableness with the staff shakeup. Sean Gleason's an offensive analyst there. He's going to have, he's not going to be able to really tell Northwestern about the Rutgers offense, but he's going to be able to tell them a lot about the Rutgers defense. You have Ben Bryant, the Cincinnati transfer quarterback coming in from Northwestern. He's a pretty good quarterback. But so there's going to be a level of pressure that wasn't there that, Rutgers needs to be able to overcome. But they have a real chance to build momentum. I've talked about it before in September. They could go 4-1. If you do that, you give yourself an opportunity to be mentally ready and prepared and confident enough to take advantage of potential breaks in October and November. And that is the difference. That can be the difference between 4-8, 5-7, 6-6, 7-5. I won't go past there. But if the offense can be efficient, even average, just but efficient in the sense of they don't make mistakes, they have enough of a run game that it's reliable, they can sustain drives, the defense isn't getting, beaten to a pulp in terms of uh endurance and just injuries and wear and tear like they have in years past. Certain guys are stepping up. I think, can the defense assert themselves as a legitimate top half of the Big Ten defense? I think they can. Um, can Sam Brown carry the run game? Can the offensive line be good enough to be able to allow him to do that? Can enough wide receivers contribute? Can Gavin Wimsatt take enough of a step forward to be competent? Um, if he, doesn't or can't, and I do think he'll be, the presumed starter going into the season. Can Evan Simon make a jump? Can he, there's some people that think that he is able or should be the starter or can win the starting role. Can he step up? There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions. But my whole point in this, and from talking to Maya Hanatu and the Harbaugh news today, and thinking about the Northwestern situation, and thinking back to 2014, the only time they made a bowl as a Big Ten member, a big part of that is taking advantage of things that go your way and being good enough to do that. And can this Rutgers team be good enough to do that? Can they take advantage of Northwestern? Can they go into the big house and, whether they win or not, gain confidence from that game that they are good, that they can go in there and give the the odds-on Big Ten favorites 2 years in a row college football playoffs? Can they give them a legit scare for really the fourth year in a row? Right, 3 years in a row they've given them some type of legitimate scare. Losing in triple overtime in 20, losing by a touchdown in 21, and then last year leading to halftime before they got their doors blown off. But they've had an interesting run against Michigan with Schiano back. And then again, I don't expect them to win at Wisconsin. Luke Fickell, I think he's going to have things humming. But maybe year one, it's easy to get down and say, oh, this team, last year they just, the offense was inept. But if the offense can be competent enough, if the defense can be solid enough, this team will be competitive and has a chance to win 6 games. And training camp is just, week or so out. Big Ten Media Days this week. I'm excited. And I'm not trying to be overly optimistic. There's certainly some challenges. There's a lot of question marks. I've talked at length about the offense and, the wide receivers having no proven FBS or Big Ten receivers. There's some key guys to replace on defense. Punting's a question, not in terms of Flynn Appleby, it's just in terms of the impact that Corsack made field position wise for me is going to be really, Rutgers isn't going to have that in their back pocket anymore. I mean, Flynn Appleby, I think, will be good, but it's unfair to expect him to be anywhere close to Corsack level. Can Jude McAtamey assert himself as a field goal kicker? Will Jay Patel pass him by? How will either of them be? Special teams, coverage wise went, backwards last year. So special teams is a huge question mark too. So listen, this team could easily go 3-9, 4-8. But I think they can do enough to win 6 or 7 games. It is possible. And obviously the gray area in between. And I think a lot of that can come down to what breaks you get, what breaks are presented to you. Iowa, right? They play Northwestern the week before Rutgers, but it's at Wrigley Field. And I'm not saying, please do not misinterpret me. I'm not saying I hope they get injuries, but playing on a baseball field, playing football on a baseball field is not ideal. And listen, that's not a great situation for them to play in the middle of the season. It's one thing in a bowl game at the end of the year, but that's a tough situation. Obviously Northwestern should be a mess by that point. I mean, they already are a mess, but Iowa should win that game handily. But that's another factor. So there's all types of, and the injuries are the great unknown for every team. And we saw Rutgers, really suffer injuries last year. Is this a year where they, and Jay Butler's a great strength coach. Can they stay healthy? Can they face teams that are losing, missing key guys that Rutgers, they're fairly healthy and they can, their depth is greater, even against teams that maybe are better. So a lot to think about, a lot to be excited about, a lot to be concerned about. But hey, we're going into the season not too long from now. I'll have plenty in training camp as well, plenty for media days this week. But I hope I gave you something to think about. I hope you can see it from my perspective to a degree of just um, that this is going to be a fascinating year going in for Schiano's fourth year. Obviously, a big one for his tenure, obviously for the program. But there's a lot of guys back. There's a lot of guys that want to leave their mark on this program, and I'm excited for them. So, thank you for listening and watching once again here at the Scarlet Faithful, and I will talk to you tomorrow.